Okay, let's get started like we normally do. I think everybody here has done this before. Oh, yeah. So, let's do a short period of bell meditation. I'll give you a moment, get into a nice meditation posture. We'll begin at the sound of the bell. I go for refuge to the Buddha, the teacher. I go for refuge to the Dharma, the teaching. I go for refuge to the Sangha, the taught. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dhamma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I have taken refuge in the Buddha. I have taken refuge in the Dhamma. I have taken refuge in the Sangha. 3 pure precepts. Cease to do harm. Do only good. Do good for others. Bodhisattva vow. However innumerable all beings are, I vow to lead them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Swaha. Excuse me. All right, I mentioned Friday that I was going to be talking about defilements and hindrances today, and I changed my mind because I realized we haven't talked about causality yet this year. And before we get into some of the other stuff we're going to be getting into later on, we need a grounding in this idea of what causality or dependent origination is. So we're going to talk about that today, and that's why the visual aid is back there. So, whether we call it causality or we call it codependent arising, call it the causal chain, the arising and falling away of phenomena, causal conditioning, all of those are just labels for the causes and effects that are brought about by the realities of impermanence and the interdependence of all phenomena. Due to the dynamism of the universe, that we inhabit, and we're lucky to inhabit, there's always change. And there's always room for change. And there's always the potential for change. The reality of the arising and falling away of phenomena adds vitality to the noble path. This path we're on of positive transformation. Because it says everything changes, you can change, you can put the effort in to change the way you'd like to see yourself be, or you can just let things happen and you can just change randomly. But it's going to happen either way. So impermanence is a Dharma ideal. We know that impermanence is. Interdependence is a Dharma ideal because we know interdependence is. So causal conditioning is the reality that arises from both impermanence and interdependence. Now, there's a sutta, it's called the Pakaya Sutta, and this is where the Buddha first said these words, and that's what's around the frame there behind me. And it says, when this is present, that comes to be. From the arising of this, that arises. When this is absent, that does not come to be. On the cessation of this, that ceases. So the Buddha's talking about causality here. He's talking about dependent origination. He's talking about this interconnection and interdependence that all things have. In causal conditioning, there cannot be one cause or one effect. It's just not the way it works. All phenomena arise from a broad range of cause and effects. No matter whether it's a thought, an action, a philosophy, material, food, theories, emotions, or ideas, or a whole host of other things, they are all subject to the actions of other phenomena. Though every causal event that was a contribution to the cause or the effect may be beyond our ability to comprehend or discover. In other words, we know they happened, but we may not be able to figure out what they were. This, though, does not negate the reality of causal conditions. Just our human ability just our ability as human beings to recognize all the nuances of the causal universe, and that's okay. As long as we know that our actions have consequences, and we know that there is this arising and falling away, and that all phenomena are interdependent and interconnected on one another, then we don't need to see all those causes and effects. But we do want to try to see the ones that are most likely to impact us or those around us. Now, there's this aphorism, and we hear this in Buddhism a lot too, that excuse me, that you're the author of your own story. That basically you decide what you do. And that is true, given that you choose how you respond to each situation. You can't create all the situations, right? But you can be the decider of how you respond to them. And still you are responding to cause and effects that you are mindful and aware of, right? Because those are the only ones you can respond to. You cannot respond to the causes that you have no awareness of. This is a good way to think about guilt sometimes, is you can't be guilty for something that you weren't aware of. You can't take responsibility if you weren't aware of. So this means that no matter the wholesomeness of your intent, things can still go wrong. Your intent must be to engage with causal factors that are more likely to cause the arising of wholesome consequences. So do good so we get good out of it. And we also, though, want it to be able to allow the falling away of causal factors likely to cause unwholesome consequences. So you've got to strive to take control of the causal conditions that you can control so that those that you can't control will have a lesser impact on your personal transformation. In the Mahima Nikayas, there's a sutta. It's called the Mahahatipodapama Sutta. And in there, the Buddha teaches this. He offers this teaching, quote, "He who sees causality sees the Dharma, and he who sees the Dharma sees causality." Buddha's making it pretty clear here. Causality and the Dharma, one isn't without the other. Right? Again, interdependent, interconnected on one another. Without an understanding and recognition of dependent origination, following the Eightfold Path or engaging in any other Buddhist practice can seem like an empty exercise. The potential is there, but the realization of possibilities will not be there. In another teaching, this is the Aituvutaka Sutta, the Buddha just simply said, quote, "A disciple sees the Dharma, and seeing the Dharma sees me," unquote. It's very similar to what Buddha said at Parinibbana, upon, right before his death, where it's like, don't look at me, look at the Dharma, because I am the Dharma, just like you're the Dharma. So the Buddha was speaking directly here to a gathering of monks, but the same holds true for all of us. If we see the Dharma, then we're seeing the Buddha. But we're not only seeing the Buddha, when we see the Dharma, we're seeing our own Buddha nature, our own Buddha element within us. Causality is the core of understanding the Dharma and of realizing how Buddhist practice can be effective in transforming our personal character and going on then to help have some impact on transforming the world around us. And this is a really powerful and this is a really liberating realization. Now, the Buddha offered that there were 4 different characteristics of causal relationships. And I told you, as the year goes on, we're slowly getting more and more into relationships between us and others and ourselves and all this stuff. So I want to talk about the Buddha here and his 4 characteristics of causal relationships because they point directly to causality. So the first one is objectivity. Dependent origination or causal conditioning is a fact no matter what angle we view it from. Whether it's metaphysics or science, human or animal, seen or not seen, there are causal results of actions taken or not taken, whether we recognize them or not. Second one is necessity. The idea, nothing happens from thin air. The cause may not be discernible. We may not be able to figure out the cause, but we know there is one. And we know that more often than not, it's going to actually be a chain of causes, or what we might call a web of causality. And the third one is invariability. Even events that appear to have no cause have a cause. And a cause will always have an effect. You can think of it as cause, effect, effect makes a cause makes another effect. It's just a big chain. Or a web. Look at it either way. Now, while an action or result may have been unintentional, it was not accidental. There was a cause. One may not have intended a particular outcome of their actions, yet they bear at least some responsibility for that outcome. This is why intent is so critical in how we interact with the world around us. Whether we recognize it or not, our actions are going to have consequences. So, we engage the world in such a way as to engender positive outcomes or wholesome karmic consequences. And then the last one is conditionality. Events are situational due to the conditions under which they happen. Unconditional, this would imply determinism, that an event was predestined or it was just some arbitrary occurrence. And we know and we can learn through experience that that just can't be so. All phenomena are causally connected, or causally conditioned. They arise and they fall and they change and they interact as a result of being influenced by some other thought or action. In real life, for example, when I ring the Ching bell, a sound follows. That is its causally conditioned action. Now, in second life, that's not always so. Right? I can ring the Ching bell here by aligning the hand symbol onto the bell and tapping the keyboard. But it doesn't always lead to that sound. Sometimes there's a lag time. Sometimes I've had it not work at all. Sometimes it didn't work because I forgot to turn my sound on. So this is all causally conditioning whether the sound of that bell comes out on second life. This is virtual causal conditioning. So even in second life, these things that are, let's say what they are, they're virtual. They're not real in the sense that we know. Even those are causally conditioned by other phenomena that happen within the virtual world. So all causal relationships are dependent on the four factors. Causality, this is one of the three characteristics of existence. Or excuse me, this goes along with the three characteristics of existence of not self, impermanence, and suffering. So in the Pakaya Sutta, the Buddha tells his disciples that the Dharma is subject to causality and so would undergo changes in accordance with whatever causal factors that it is affected by, like environment, and culture, and context, and level of need. This is the reality of causally conditioned phenomena. And we're all that. The Buddha offered that a realization of causal conditioning explains the existence of all phenomena and the complex interaction between them. A realization of causality empowers us with the knowledge that we can make a difference through our intentional actions, but also we can make a difference through our unintentional actions. And it brings with the knowledge that internal and external phenomena mold how you are. So effort and commitment must be made to be more mindful of those influences. This is a liberating realization that the internal and the external phenomena mold how you are. So it's up to you to guide the internal and to be aware of the external and respond to it appropriately in order to stay on that wholesome personal path that you're on. So viewing how you interact with the universe through a causal lens, this will change your perceptions. It'll change your intent. It'll change your actions. When you realize every move and every thought and every word will become part of the web of causal conditioning, then the need and the value of mindfulness and awareness becomes crystal clear. Or it should. So there's another aphorism. This is a pretty old aphorism that says, think before you speak or act. I like it. Makes a lot of sense. But what about this? What about think before you think? Because how you think leads to a causal chain of how you'll continue to think unless you become the cause of your own transformation. How we think naturally leads to how we act. And through practice and study, we may come to realize that some patterns of thought that we have are negative. and that they're leading us to make even more bad decisions. And we really want to work toward making better decisions, better choices. And causality allows the opportunity to make positive changes along with the knowledge that intentional thought leads to good decisions and positively directed actions. So, causality. All phenomena interact and are interconnected with all other phenomena, even though that connection may be so tenuous and so way out there that it really has very little effect on what we're doing in the moment. But it's important for us to always keep in mind this interconnection and interdependence. That's why sometimes it's called a causal web. That's why there's a web there on the visual aid. I mean, think of the idea that we're each at the center of our own web. And all of those webs overlap every other web in some way, shape, or form, right? So if something touches your web, then that vibration is going to go to other webs, and their vibrations come back to your web. So this is how we can look at this causal web idea or causal chain idea, that this chain is not linear. So maybe looking at it more like a web would make more sense to us. So something to contemplate, think about, is your web. Think about your immediate, from the center of your web, your immediate interconnections and interdependencies. And then slowly let your awareness expand beyond that and just play around with it. Because this is how you learn through experience that this is in fact Dharma, reality. That all phenomena interact and are interdependent on each other.